Excellent. So then I can begin this morning's session. Is the sound okay for everybody? Excellent. If for some reason you can't hear the sound or I'm speaking too fast, then please put your hand up and let me know that I'm speaking too fast. Was I speaking too fast? Okay. So, part of kindfulness is not just asking you to be kindful. We have to show that ourselves by making sure that everyone on this retreat feels safe and valued while they are here. And because of that, we make sure there's plenty of little books, and to let you know that I don't get anything from those books. I don't get anything from coming here. I get totally exploited. But that is my joy. The one thing you do give, and what Ajahn gets, from hosting this retreat, is the joy of serving and seeing people's problems get less, people's happiness gets more, and people's understanding get very, very deep. And again, I did first visit Norway many years ago, in 1970. I think many of you weren't born then. But nevertheless, that was when I was still had long hair and a beard. But it was weird, even though that was the summertime, and I had a long hair and a beard, and went all the way up to the North Cape. It was still freezing cold. And these days, I don't wear any socks, just walked over without any hat. I only got this thing underneath my robe, and you feel very comfortable. A lot of times it's when you don't worry, you don't think too much about the cold or about the heat. It does make a lot of difference. I've seen many times when people complain in Australia, so it's so hot, it's so hot, it's so hot. That makes me feel more hot. And they say, oh, it's freezing outside, it's really cold. And that makes me feel more cold. Fortunately, I'm rebellious these days. So if people say it's feeling really cold outside, then I refuse to wear my hat. If they say it's very, very hot, then I'll put a beanie on. Just to go against what people expect. And to see when the mind is strong, you can do all sorts of things you're not supposed to do. And you still keep really, really, really healthy. Now, this is all about, again, training the mind, but training the mind not to force the mind, as I said yesterday, to understand it, work with it, and then you find incredible peace. I did answer one question from the gentleman over there about restlessness, or how you actually let go. And one of the stories I didn't really have the time to say, which adds to the idea of restlessness and thinking too much. As you know, that I'm a visiting monk these 4 or 5 days. When you're a visitor, I don't have to do any work. Anything which I need or anything which is wrong, anything I need fixed up, I ask Ajahn, and it's his problem. Sorry. But when I go back to Australia in a week's time, again, all those problems are there for me to fix. But it became a very difficult time, that when you have so many temples and monasteries and disciples to look after, not only in Australia, but in other countries close by. And it got to the point that when I was in the monastery where I live, that it was so tense for me, no rest at all. I've been working on the weekend in our city centre in the middle of Perth, and on the Sunday evening Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, working in our monastery. It's only a small monastery, about 450 acres. That was satire, okay? So it's a huge place, and there's many monks and many buildings and many activities there. So it got to the point you'd be with a visitor and showing them around, and they would say, "Oh, what a peaceful, beautiful monastery this is." And I would reply, "What do you mean? It's not peaceful. This is my work site. This is where I have to fix all the problems, to build, to solve people's problems, to talk about the monks' meditations, to make sure there's plenty of equal opportunity for nuns." So there's so much work to be done. And when I could not see the beauty and the peace in my own monastery, while other people could, I realized there was something very, very wrong. So what I did, and Ajahn remembers this, he was there at the time, I decided every Monday morning I would pretend to be a visitor in the monastery where I was the abbot. I was only visiting that day. So someone would come and say, "Can we see Ajahn Brahm?" I said, "No, but I'll let him know later on that you want to see him." Actually, that happened once. These stories, I haven't said this for a long time. There was a Sri Lankan woman came. And Sri Lankan, she was obviously a very high-class person because she came in expensive sari and jewellery. When she came close by, I honestly thought it was the ice cream truck coming. Ding, 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 clank, 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 clink, clink, clink. She has so many bangles and jewellery. Anyway, at that time, I'd just finished mixing some concrete to build one of the buildings. Now you remember, just monks work very hard. So I was all spattered with cement and really looked unkempt, untidy. And so she came up to me, this woman, and said, "I'm looking for Ajahn Brahm. Do you know where he is?" And I never let on it was me. And I said, "If you go down to the hall, he'd probably be down there in about a quarter of an hour." So off she went. And I quickly went to my room, had a shower, changed the clothes, made myself look tidy. And then I went to see her, and we had a lovely discussion about meditation and Dhamma. And then afterwards he said, "This is a wonderful monastery, it's a great talk, you're a wonderful monk, Ajahn Brahm, but if you don't mind me saying, when I came here, I saw one of your monks as I came here. He looked so shabby and dirty." And of course I never let on that was me. And I said, "I will talk to him later, madam." And of course I do talk to myself, so I don't lie. But anyway, that morning, Monday morning, I pretended to be a visitor. So if there's any problems in the monastery, sorry, I'm not at work this morning. If any monks were thinking of disrobing, I'm sorry, I'm not working this morning. If anybody was dying and needed an ambulance, I'm sorry, I'm not on duty today. I took it that far. Otherwise, there's no way you can have any peace. And so because I pretended to be a visitor to the monastery where I was the boss, then I could start to see its beauty and tranquility again. If you are an owner, you have so many responsibilities, so many duties, so many things you have to solve. As a visitor, you can enjoy it. This place here is a beautiful temple. When you're visiting, when you're running the retreat, or the head monk of the place, there's so many things you have to do and sort out. If you're a visitor, you have no responsibilities. If you ever go to a restaurant for lunch or dinner, do you ever wash up afterwards? That's somebody else's problem. You can enjoy the food. If you go into a national park for a nice walk, you don't have to worry about fixing up the paths or pruning any trees which need to be pruned. You're just a visitor. You can enjoy the beauty there. And that's not a small point, because so often, even in our meditation, we act as if we're an owner of the meditation. We think we own our body and we own our mind. Just imagine you're just visiting for a couple of hours, or just visiting for 2 days. If you're visiting for 2 days, you would look at your body and look at your mind in a totally different way. You'll be far more beautiful and peaceful and happy, because you have far less you need to do. You can relax. What do you need to do right now in this retreat? Why are you here? Is it to find out some truth about nature, or to fix up some problems, to get some peace in your life? I don't know why you're here. But when you have a job to do and a goal to achieve, it's so much more work. If instead you want to try and enjoy this body and mind, which in a sense you're visiting, then you'll find meditation becomes the easiest thing in the world. And to describe how it becomes the easiest thing to do is as a simile which I've often given, and I think it fits into this early part of this weekend retreat. It's a simile of the 1,000-petaled lotus. A lotus is a traditional image of Buddhism. We got any images? I can't turn around now. Image of the lotus behind? Yeah, very good. Excellent. So the lotus is a common simile of Buddhism. And the idea of a 1,000-petal lotus, so many petals. And the deeper you go into the lotus, the more fragrant and beautiful and thin, delicate are those petals. But at night time, the lotus is always closed up. And when it's closed up, if you ever look at a lotus at night time when it's closed, the outermost petals, I'm not sure if you can even call them petals, it's almost like a sheath which is protecting the inner petals. And if you look closely at that outermost sheath, it's usually like corrugated, at least the lotuses which I have looked at, and the leaf is very thick, there's no fragrance to it, because its job is to protect the innermost petals. But then what happens in the early morning, or once the sun rises, and that lotus receives the light and the warmth, those two things from the sun, the light and the warmth, then those outermost petals, the sheath, starts to open. And as it opens, it reveals the next layer of petals. And the next layer of petals, the outermost real petals of the lotus, yes, you can see they've got some colour, but they're still quite thick and the fragrance isn't that strong. But now those outermost petals are receiving the warmth and the light of the sun. They too have a chance to open. And so the lotus opens stage by stage, layer by layer. When one layer opens, it allows the warmth and light of the sun to warm and radiate the next layer of petals so they can open up. The next layer of petals is always within the layer of petals which has just been opened. And that's a very good simile for meditation, a good simile for you, and opening yourself out to be able to see what's inside you. And first of all, the outermost layer of the petals can look very unpromising. I recall one of the stories that when I was teaching a 9-day meditation retreat over in Australia, this one gentleman turned up. He was a big Australian man, and he was wearing national Australian dress. I don't know if you know what national dress means in Australia. It was a singlet, shorts, and thongs on his feet, nothing else. That traditional Australian dress. Very rough, but very comfortable in the hot weather. And because of that, you could see he was covered with so many tattoos. And I don't usually see, not in those days anyway, people wearing so many tattoos and so roughly dressed coming on a meditation retreat. And I admit I judged him, because not far from our retreat centre, maybe 6 kilometers only, there is a prison. And straight away I thought, excuse me sir, if you're visiting your friends in jail, it's up the road, about 6 kilometers. I think you come to the wrong place. This is the retreat centre. And this gentleman scowled at me and said, no, I am on the retreat. My name is registered. So I looked and he was registered. I judged him. But the reason I tell that story was later on, as the meditation retreat developed and continued, that I would always give interviews to some of the meditators to find out how they were going. And on that retreat, he was the star meditator. I remember him coming to me and just telling me about what meditation he was experiencing. And it was the jhanas. And it really blew me away, but it was true. And so, even the most unlikely of you, sometimes it doesn't mean that you can't get the deepest of the meditations. I know this so well now that I can't judge any of you, and there's a good reason for that. You may look the most thick, unpleasant, outermost sheath of a lotus, but inside each one of you there's these beautiful petals, and the deeper you go inside, the more fragrant, delicate and profound are those petals. And again, the next one is inside the one you're experiencing right now. The warmth and the light of the sun is also important in this simile. How do you open up a lotus? Again, make sure the warmth and the light of the sun can actually strike that lotus unimpeded, continuously. And the light of the sun, I hope we've all worked out now, means mindfulness, awareness. And the warmth of the sun stands for kindness. You do need both of those to open up the lotus, the warmth and the light. You need the kindfulness and the mindfulness to open up you. So what actually happens to be able to open up you, find out what's inside? That's a very good description of what meditation is. You go deep inside. The benefits are immense, but how do you get deep inside? You start with awareness of your body and the kindness to it. Now I did ask Ajahn afterwards, most of you when you do meditation, apparently, you have some guided meditation. So after the talk today I will do a guided meditation and I will introduce these concepts of, first of all, being kind and aware of your own body, which means that when you are meditating you can feel your body. And I usually start with the toes. The reason I start being aware of your body with the toes is because many people have got stupid feet. That's how my master Ajahn Chah said it. We're not so in our heads thinking about stuff, we're hardly aware at all of when even our feet meet the ground, especially our toes. So you can become aware of your toes. Like even now, you don't need to look at your toes. Can you feel them? Can you be aware of them? This mindfulness of the body with the kindness gives you much more abilities and power than you ever expected. Many years ago there was a monk in my monastery who had a very bad back. And we managed to get him a CT scan, find out what's wrong, and they came back, the experts said he had a genetic defect in his spine and there was no possibility of an operation. The doctor just said, just make sure you don't meditate. He said, he's a monk. That's like telling a Norwegian not to ski. Is that right? Okay. So anyway, so he was a bit disappointed, but he did find a book which taught him about awareness of his body, and in particular how to use that to heal your own back. The book stated the truth. There are some muscles on either side of your spine which you are totally unaware of because you don't need to be. So the book started by saying, take your hand every morning and just rub those muscles, stroke them, 15 minutes on one side, 15 minutes on the other side, as a regular practice. All that was doing is what we would say these days, of creating that neural connection between his brain and those muscles. So after about 3 months, he could feel those muscles. In the same way I can feel my nose, I can feel my hands. Now he could feel those muscles which I haven't even developed the feeling of. And after 3 months, when he could experience those muscles easily, then by trial and error, see if you can move those muscles, stretch them or contract them. And that was just done by trial and error. The wonderful thing about mindfulness, it does give you feedback. So while you're aware of those muscles, you can know what worked, what didn't work. And after a while, he could move those muscles at will. Move them this way, move them that way. And after another 3 months, he was told to actually exercise those muscles in the same way you'd move your arm up and down, 15 minutes every morning. And then those muscles became so strong, much stronger than other people's muscles, much stronger than my muscles on either side of my spine. And that was the solution. Those muscles now compensate for any weakness in his spine. That's what actually mindfulness is, and how you can create those neural connections with any part of your body. So by being aware of the feet, you're creating a neural connection there. You can feel what your toes are like. And as you're feeling the toes, and as you move up the body, like I said yesterday, about if there's any diseases, any cancers, tumours or whatever's anywhere, you can actually feel it without any fear, often catching it before doctors can. And as you feel that, just by trial and error, you know how to relax it with kindness. So as you go up your body, you're becoming aware of your body, relaxing it. And I'm not quite sure that if this works for others, but it always works for me. I've been doing this for years. When I relax my body, it becomes so delightful. It's just like you've had a massage, or you've been in a hot tub, or you've just been on one of these recliners by the beach in some tropical resort. Everything feels just so at ease. Once you've given your body that degree of mindfulness and kindness and the body feels at ease, then it's quite simple to go inside that outermost petal of the lotus. Go inside to your mind, your inner world. And in the inner world, sometimes again people ask, what is the mind? I will now give a little party trick for you. Now, right now, I want you to be honest, don't be embarrassed. Those people who are happy, put up the left hand. Those people who are not so happy, put up the right hand. Okay, doesn't matter, just one, which is the most. Okay, keep it up. Now, if it's the happy, most of you have got the left hand up, that's a relief. If you are happy, point to it for me, please. Where is it? Don't look at other people. It's your happiness. Where is it located? People are pointing all over the place. So you are happy, but you don't know where it is? If you are angry, where is it? If you're in love, where is it? If you're afraid, where is it? The point is, it doesn't live in your body. Happiness and sadness, fear, anxiety, it lives in the mind. If you're feeling peaceful, where does the peace exist? Peace belongs in the mind, not in the body. You may think it's in your heart. We know that these days we do heart transplants. So if somebody else gets your heart, where does your peace go? Sometimes people have had a transplant of a pig's heart. I mean, they can't feel peaceful anymore. Are pigs peaceful? Anyway, the answer is that these are qualities of the emotional world. They belong in this thing which we call a mind. Just as like bushes and trees and flowers, they mostly live in gardens. Peace lives in your mind. So if you start to be aware of something like peace, you're actually watching your mind. That's one of the reasons why inside the body, once the body starts to become calm and peaceful, then you can be aware of the next layer of petals, which begin your exploration of the mind. What happens to many people when they start letting go of the body and it's nice and relaxed and they start to look inside? A lot of the times, again, they are in this layer of petals called time. All the memories of your past and the thoughts about your future. And if anybody ever wants to understand just how illogical it is to think so much about the future, especially your fears, please, even on this retreat, write down all the fears which you have, and maybe 1 month later look at them again and see how many of those fears came true. Most of the things you worry about never happen. It's usually something much worse. No, it's not. I'm only joking there. But nevertheless, I don't know why we do that, but it's just burning up the energy of our mind. And anyway, I think you all know that now is the time your future is being made. This is the only time you can do anything about your future. So if you want to have a good future, keep your attention now. And the past, what you remember about the past is actually not what really happened. We bend and select parts of the past to accord with what we think should have happened, not actually what had happened. A good example of that, I don't know if any of you have ever fallen in love. If you fell in love the first time, you think, oh, he's such a great guy, he's a wonderful guy, she's such a beautiful girl. And then after a couple of months, when you start to commence divorce proceedings, you think, why did I ever marry him? It's the same person. But we actually select what we want to believe, in what happened, what we want to remember. Your past is very uncertain. You ask any psychologist. Anyway, because of that, how do we let go of the past and the future so we can be comfortably in the present moment? I didn't mention yesterday, but I'm going to confirm it now with mindfulness and kindness. Those two again. Whatever happens in the past, be aware of how it feels. Know it as best you can. And be kind to it. Give this beautiful compassion. I don't know what you did, but if it was your bad behavior, don't worry about it. Be kind to yourself. It's from those mistakes we make, that's where we learn. As a monk over in Thailand, any time I made a mistake, you know what my teacher did? He laughed. It wasn't any punishment. I made so many mistakes, I caused my teacher so much happiness. And I couldn't understand why he was doing that. It was just being kind. We all make mistakes. And when we own up to those mistakes, we're aware of them, and we don't want to punish them. We have this wonderful amnesty to ourselves and to others. It means we have the opportunity to learn. If you hide your mistakes, you don't admit them, of course you learn nothing. But it's hard to admit because you have to be kind and realize we all make mistakes. Look, I remember doing some counselling for a lady in Perth in Australia who was dying of cancer. And so once she trusted me, I asked her, and she was maybe in her 70s or 80s, and this was maybe about 20 years ago, and I asked her, what's the worst thing you've ever done in your life? And of course she said, I can't tell you. It took a lot of encouragement to get her to admit the worst thing she'd ever done in her life. I said I would never tell anybody, but please, I haven't kept that rule. Because I think she wouldn't mind, because what she said was really important for each one of you to hear as well. After a while I managed to get it out of her that the worst thing she'd ever done in her life was kissed another woman's husband, just once. In 80 years of life, that's the worst thing she ever did. And I looked at her and said, that's not bad. If that's the worst thing you've ever done, that's pretty good. What's the worst thing you've ever done? But whatever you think it is, because we're ashamed of it, afraid of it, it becomes a huge problem for us. We amplify it out of all proportion. Once kissing another man's husband, that wasn't bad, if that's the worst thing you've ever done in your whole life. So, it's one of the reasons why the way we treat the past, when we're afraid of it, ashamed of it, it gets so bad inside of us that we won't admit it to anybody. We never learn to let go and be kind. So the awareness and the kindness which we give to our past and to what other people did. I don't know why other people did that to you, but just give them the benefit of the doubt, be kind to them, and you find it's easier to forgive them. When you can forgive them, you're a victor rather than a victim. You feel free of that heaviness of the past. You don't let go of the past through ignoring it. You don't be free of the future from thinking it doesn't exist. You get free from the past and the future through awareness and kindness, and not thinking you're the perfect person. The sorts of stupid things which I did, even with my teacher, one of the most stupid things which I ever did, and I remember this, going on the train from Paddington. Oh no, it's actually before then. Going on the train from Stroud to Paddington not yesterday, the day, yeah, it was yesterday morning. I passed this block of flats where an old school friend lived years ago. His name was Christopher Nightingale. We were only about 10 at the time. And as young, he was a whiz at chemistry, and I was naughty. And so together we made a bomb. I supplied a tin can, he supplied the chemicals. It was a school holiday, and we went into the park. This was in 1961 or something. There's no terrorists in those days except us kids. So we let off a bomb and it went bang. It worked. No one was injured until we were caught by the barkeeper. I thought that was a wonderful thing to do. It was a bit naughty, I admit that. A future Buddhist monk making a bomb. But anyway, it makes it much easier when you admit those things and you learn from them. You're not perfect, you learn. One of the other things which I did, I think a few of you may know, I was only about, I think maybe a bit older than that, maybe about 8 or 9 years of age. And it was my mother's birthday. And I decided to get her a special present. In those days there was a food fad in London. And it was eels and mashed potatoes. Now eels, this is like fish. They'd fry the eels or boil them and serve them with mashed potato. So anyway, I never ate that, but I did go as a 7 or 8 year old to the shop to buy a live eel. Once, don't encourage me. When I bought the live eel, I had the nice little box ready, and I put the eel in the box, made sure it had a bit of water in there so it wouldn't sort of die. And then closed up the box. I already had the birthday paper, nice thing with flowers on and stuff, and I wrapped up the special birthday gift as best as I possibly could as a 7 or 8 year old. Had a ribbon and I tied it in a nice bow and a nice little card. To Mummy, happy birthday, with love from your son. And even then I had a lot of restraint, because I wouldn't laugh as I presented that to my mummy. Mummy, happy birthday. And for those of you who have children, you can understand how my mummy felt. Oh, how sweet. You chose this all by yourself? Yes, Mummy, I hope you like it. And so she opened the box. She didn't know at all what was inside. Took off another paper, opened the box. And this eel, I could not have trained it better. As she opened up the box, it lifted up its head and looked at my mum. And she screamed. I probably could have heard it from Norway. But I was smart. I had what these days they call an exit strategy. I knew exactly where I was going to run to and hide for 2 hours. But I admit that. I'm sure you've done some naughty things in your life. It's a rotten thing to do to your mum. But nevertheless, you admit it. And you make sure you learn from it never to do it again. That's how we deal with the past. When you tell your stories of the past, what would other people do? A lot of them, they would laugh. How funny that was. You may have harmed or hurt somebody, but you apologize. So when we are kind to the past and kind to the future, we can learn from it and we can let it go. And once we're kind to past and future and we let it go, then what we got left, again, is this wonderful present moment, the now. That's the next layer of petals in the lotus. You're going inside time. And that layer of petals will close up again very quickly if you don't appreciate and are kind to this present moment. You don't need to worry about the future. If you're in this present moment, you're making the best future possible. You're resting and relaxing, for goodness sake. That's great for their health, great for your mental powers, the way you think. And worrying about the past, which you can't change, and again, it's wasting your energy and power. Are you tired? You get stressed out and burnt out, or have you got lots of free energy to waste on thinking about past and future? And the other thing, people say you learn from the past. You don't. You learn from the present much more than you'll ever learn from the past. So we stay in this moment and we're kind to it. We appreciate it. It's important for us, whatever that present is. As I said yesterday, when you learn how to be in the present moment and appreciate it, are kind to it, value it, you find you don't have a restless mind anymore. Wherever you are, that's where you're aware. You're here. So we get into this beautiful present moment. And as you get into that present moment, that already is a very wonderful layer of petals. And what's the next layer of petals? You're just kind and aware of the present moment, how it feels. Then that soon opens out to the next layer of petals inside your lotus, which is called silence. I was mentioning that yesterday. When you really appreciate silence, you don't hold silence. You just let it come to you. And it's so gorgeous and wonderful. You soon stay with the silence. You don't want to say any words. I don't know why people think they have to have noise. Even in elevators, there's always this music all the time. You go in, I remember in the airports, a few times I went into these like prayer rooms, meditation rooms. I only think went in there 2 or 3 times because they were so noisy. You're just about to get into a deep meditation. Said, this is a security announcement. If you see anything weird or strange, please tell everybody. This is another announcement for flight sort of 999. Please come quickly. There's always noise inside the meditation rooms. These were supposed to be holy places. Even as a kid, I remembered very often if I had any business to do in London, that I would find a quiet place to relax and rest. And I remember going to Westminster Cathedral when I was doing some visas to go to Thailand. And I went into the cathedral there, and I was so disappointed. I thought this would be a place I can just sit down quietly and do some meditation. But they had always announcements on the PA system. Something about some sermon or some fundraiser or something or whatever. You couldn't see the silence in the holy places of London. That's one of the reasons why the best churches in Norway are probably in the forests and the mountains, where there's a sense of holiness with silence. So that's actually when you go inside the present moment, you get this wonderful layer of petals called silence. It's just happening to you naturally. And as you watch that silence with kindness and with awareness, the next thing which comes up usually is what we call your breathing. Some of you have heard about the traditional Buddhist meditation of breath meditation. Why the breath? And the reason is because when everything else gets quiet, that's the last thing which is moving. Your heart is also moving, but we try not to be aware of our heart, because if you are aware of your heart, the next thing with the breath is to calm it down. If you calm down your heartbeat too much, and the heartbeat stops, then you're in trouble, and so am I. And especially Ajahn Brahm, he's in big trouble. I'm not so in danger because I'm out of the country on Wednesday. He has to face the music. But anyway, so it's usually your breath you're aware of. And when you're aware of your breath, it's not that you decide to watch your breathing. The breathing comes to you. You're sitting there just in this present moment, silent. And then you can feel your breath. Because everything else is quietened down. And so you're going deeper into the lotus. All you're doing is being mindful and being kind. And because you're not doing very much, you're not thinking or planning, that was left some time ago, and your body is nice and relaxed and at ease, it means that you don't need to breathe that much. You don't need to metabolize so much. Which means that your breath is going in very softly. It doesn't need much oxygen. It goes out very softly. It's a natural process, automatic. And as it gets softer and softer, you go deeper into these breath petals, and the breath becomes very delightful. And this is actually where, as you go deeper into your lotus, it gets more and more joyful and happy. You're actually enjoying the meditation. It's one of the most beautiful things you could do. I delight in my opportunities to meditate. I don't just do this as a penance. I do this because it's fun and it's healthy and it creates a clarity of mind. So it's all positive. The only thing I say, the danger of meditation, I should let people be aware. So I should say whatever. There's only one danger of deep meditation, and that is you've got a likelihood in deep meditation of losing all your hair. You're smart enough to know what I mean. There's a couple of people already lost their hair, so you've got nothing to worry about. But anyway, as you get into the breath becomes delightful. And I mean really delightful. Because the mind is freed from wasting its energy. Do you ever feel tired, stressed out? Your mind feels very weak? Why? It is because you waste energy too much. You can imagine just sitting there nice and silent in this moment, just watching a breath go in, breath go out. As you go deeper into that, the energies of your mind come back. You repower yourself. A good example of that, another of these stories, that my group over in Singapore, the Buddhist Fellowship, they were deciding to try and adapt the Buddha's teachings in a new format. So they had a play over in Singapore, and they're about using some of these Buddhist ideas to solve problems in life. And so because I was their spiritual patron, they, the main teacher for them, they invited me over there to participate in the play in one of the big theatres in Singapore. I was actually one of the stars of the show. What am I doing? The thing is, I trust people. Because I trust people, okay, I'll come along and help out whichever way I could. So it was very, I think these days in English they call it quiche. They had this person who was saying, they're having a lot of trouble with their marriage, and then they read this book by this teacher called Ajahn Brahm, and that was my cue to come on stage and say a few words. Okay, but people liked it. So anyway, I arrived from Perth just in the maybe 12 o'clock midday, and straight to the theatre to do the matinee show, they called it. And then after the matinee show, everybody else went for dinner. I don't have dinner. And I was really tired out by this time. And so I said, look, just let me find a nice quiet place. You go and have your dinner. And then I found a nice quiet place which was dark, no one was disturbing me. And I just meditated. And when you get into these nice, peaceful, quiet meditations, they're just so lovely. And you come out afterwards, and you're recharged up. It's like taking your mobile phone, which has got hardly any power left in it, and you plug it in, supercharger, and afterwards, woo! And so I remember that afternoon shower was just full of beans, full of energy. And I shouldn't have been, because I know how to recharge. So when you get into that breath, it becomes delightful. That's how it feels. So much happiness and joy. They're not finished yet. Because as you go into that, you just with the mindfulness and the kindness, you watch that joy. In Nepal it's called piti sukha. And that comes into this beautiful, usually this beautiful light in the mind. These are what we call nimittas. Now you're really getting into some strong meditation. I'm not quite sure if you came here in this retreat to learn about nimittas, but you're going to learn about them anyway. And the reason is because sometimes these happen whether you like them or not. So often I found when I start teaching like this, many people come up afterwards and say, yeah, I had that when I was young. Or I did that, I was doing some other retreat or some other practice. And I was doing even like yoga, and I just closed my eyes, and this beautiful light, and it was so wonderful. But they got afraid. And because they got afraid, they never enjoyed it as they had the opportunity to. So these things are quite natural. What's happening here is your mind is getting very strong. And the mind is dominating the five senses now. You can still maybe hear, feel something, but those feelings in the body, the sounds which you may hear, like they're far, far away. It's like these things are subdued. And you're inside this beautiful layer of petals called the mind. And they are more fragrant, more beautiful than anything you've seen before. This is one of the reasons why I teach this. Because when these things happened to me, I didn't know what I was doing. And one of the first comments when I came out of one of these deep meditations was, why hasn't anybody taught me about this before? This was real. I wasn't going crazy. At this time I was a theoretical physicist at Cambridge. Why didn't you tell me about these things? Who knows about these things? So from that time on I just made a resolution. Even if you may be a long way away from these things, or you may be close to them, I don't know. But they're real. And one day they do actually happen. And so as you see these beautiful lights in the mind, what it is, you're seeing your mind distant from the five senses. And please, when anything like this happens in your meditation, please don't be afraid. It's quite normal. It's very, very safe. And don't be excited either. If you want to be excited and throw a party, you've got a deep meditation, wait till you're finished. Say the wows and tremendous things afterwards. But if you say it when you're meditating, wow, it's happening, you blow it. So, what should you do? Instead, just be mindful and be kind. The awareness and the kindness, that's all. Anyway, that awareness and the kindness takes you into deeper states. And so you're getting closer into the center of your lotus. And the more and more you go in, the more powerful your meditations, the more kind, the more healthy, benefits all the way. So anyway, that's how we open the door of our lotus. And the deeper you go in, the more powerful are the experiences which you have, totally safe. And then after the nimittas, that's when these things called jhanas appear. One after the other. The next jhana is in the one you're in right now. And these are very powerful states. more happiness and bliss than you've ever had in your whole life. Totally positive, no dangers, except of course losing your hair. And after you come out of these, then you can understand, what the Buddha taught and why the Buddha taught it. Powerful states. And also, if you happen to be a Christian and you experience these states, especially the first jhana, many of those spiritual seekers in the Middle Ages, I'm talking about St. John of the Cross, Teresa of Avila and others, I'm not totally sure, but it does seem that they had experienced these first jhanas, and when they did, they experienced them as a union with God. So if you're a Buddhist and experience the first jhana, they'll name a hospital after you. We'll have St. Nito's. St. Nito's hospital or St. Nito's school. Do you do that in Norway? Name churches and schools after saints? You do? Is there a St. Nito's yet? No, not yet. Okay. St. John Endres? Where's John gone? No, not yet? Okay. We'll keep meditating. We'll get there. So, it is just because these are amazing states which each one of you, and I meant saying this seriously, I'm not just exaggerating, each one of you can experience deep inside if you let go enough. So when these things happen, then you understand just what's in the center of your lotus. It goes very deep, but it's wonderful to be able to experience. And afterwards, the wisdom comes so great. I was just saying this to, I think, Ajahn Nito this morning, that some of these references to meditation in those Christian texts, there is, in the Psalms, there's this statement which I always thought, where did this come from? And it says, be still and know that you are God. What on earth does that mean? And of course the answer is, if you are really still, you go into your lotus, then you experience these incredible states of mind where your sense of self is vanishing. And it's also more bliss than you've ever had in your life. Many times that bliss, we equate it with love. But you're not in there. Your sense of self is gone. And that's, I think, where that phrase comes from. Typical Buddhism. So anyway, don't tell too many people about that, because otherwise they'll take it out of the Bible. They did that. They had a Saints' Day. This was in the Catholic Church. They had a Saints' Day. I think it was in November sometime. It could have been about now. It was a feast of Saint Jehoshaphat. I don't know if any scholars are here. Jehoshaphat, there was a text in Georgia in the Middle East, southern Russia. And there this Saint Jehoshaphat once saw an old man, a sick man, a dying man, and a holy man. And Saint Jehoshaphat left the world, became enlightened, or became a saint, and then went to India, where he converted the whole of India to Christianity. That was Saint Jehoshaphat. Of course, anyone who knows Buddhism, that was the Buddha. He didn't convert India to Christianity. He made them so many Buddhists. Jehoshaphat comes from the word Bhagavat, just as the words actually change when they go from one country to another. And so it was definitely the Buddha they were talking about. They had a saint's day to him in the Catholic calendar. But then, when people found out about that, especially the Western Buddhists, and they let it on, then they took his they took his saint's day out of the calendar. So they don't celebrate St. Jehoshaphat anymore. Buddhists do. Well, the Buddha. Anyway, so keep some of these things quiet. And there's another, there's another 5 minutes. There's another story that when we were in London recently, that it was very difficult to get from the talk we gave at one of the centres in London. So we stayed at a hotel, not really a big hotel. It was St. Catherine's Retreat Centre. It was actually originally right next to the Tower of London, central London. But it was for religious people mostly. Well, the people who wanted to live have a quiet evening. And what I was really fascinated by was their symbol. St. Catherine's symbol was what we would see as a Dhammachakra, the wheel of the Dhamma. And I always wondered, where is this coming from? I don't know if there's any people from UK here other than Ayachanda and I, but you always have this ceremony on November the 5th, like fireworks day. And one of the fireworks we have is a Catherine wheel, which you lighted, it sparks. It's named after her. So she was like in the 11th century. This foundation was made in UK. She was about the 5th century, lived in Alexandria, in northern Egypt. And this is where it fascinated me. Just in northern Egypt, in Alexandria, they had the Therapeutae. This was in the turn of basically the same era when Christ was around, over 2,000 years ago. And the Therapeutae were supposed to have, according to Philo of Alexandria, who wrote about Alexandria in those days, this was a monastery which the monks and the nuns celebrated the moon days, and they were bald-headed. When I asked one of the monks I knew many years ago who was fluent in Greek, when he went back to Switzerland, can you please go to the library and check it out in the original Greek language? Because you know the problem, if you look at even Pali texts, sometimes how you translate them can make a lot of difference. So he looked it up, and he wrote me this letter many years ago, saying, Ajahn Brahm, I thought you were crazy. I don't know why people think that. But anyway, he said, he used the English word, slang word, this is a dead ringer for Buddhist monks and nuns. Because he was a Buddhist monk himself, he could recognize the telltale features of a Buddhist monastic community of monks and fully ordained nuns in northern Egypt at the turn of the first millennium. Anyway, I really get excited about that anyway, but I should stop now. So thank you all for listening.